Hello, I am the Jacob, and this is my unprofessional reading of the second story in The Last Apprentice, A Coven of Witches. I'm going to give my commentaries and reactions as I read. Yeah. Sit back, listen to it while you do whatever. I don't care. I'm just reading a book. That's it. Hello, I am reading Last Apprentice, A Coven of Witches by Joseph Delaney. The second story, Dirty Dora. My name is Dirty Dora Dean, and I'm a dead witch. Some call me dirty because I spit thick slimy gobs of spittle to mark my territory. But I'm bad, not mad. Have a reason for all I do. When I sniff that spit, I know I'm home and safe in the dell. Sniff it in the dark, I can, when I'm crawling back on my hands and knees. Although I'm cold and dead now, I live under the rotting leaves of the witch in Witch Dell. I'm still strong enough to leave it, and I want to tell my tales while I can. Most nights I hunt for blood, but once or twice a week I go back to our cozy cottage where my sister Aggie still lives. We chat together about the old times while my damp clothes steam in front of the fire. Then, after Aggie has combed the beetles out of my hair, I spend a bit of time jotting down my memories. It's not easy because I find it difficult to remember what happened, and I want to get it all down before it's all gone out of my mind. Or I can't write no more. Don't know which will happen first. Never can tell with us dead witches. Sometimes the mind goes completely. Then again, it could be my hands that drop off so that I can't hold a pen. More than one dead witch crawls around the dell and with pieces of her body missing. One ain't even got a head. Now I only remember 3 things properly. 3 chunks, and that's all. The rest is gone. So I'm guessing each chapter is what she remembers, because there's 3 chapters, and she remembers 3 things. So, Chapter 1, My Sabbaths. I'll start by telling you about my Sabbaths, the ones I enjoyed as a girl and a young woman. The 4 main ones are Candlemas, Walpurgis, Lammas, and Halloween. Llamas? I don't know. They're the nights when the Pendle witches meet, not together, mind. The different clans don't see eye to eye. They gather in different places. We Deans usually meet on the outskirts of our village and build a big fire. The 13 members of the Coven form a circle around it, warming their hands. Other witches from the clan stand further back, according to their age and power. We kill a lamb first, slitting its throat and covering our hands and faces in it with its warm blood. Once its carcass has been thrown into the fire, we start with curses, shrieking them up into the sky to fly out toward our enemies or make their bodies wither and rot. Exciting it is. Loved that more than anything when I was young. But Halloween was always my favorite Sabbath because that was when the fiend sometimes paid a visit. Got lots of names he has. Some call him Old Nick, but people who ain't witches usually call him the devil. Didn't stay long, but it was good just to get a glimpse of him. Most witches want to see the fiend at least once in their lives, Big he was, very big, with a tail, hooves, and lovely glossy black hair all over his body. And what a lovely stink he gave out. Ranker than a tomcat. He'd appear right in the middle of the flames, and the Coven members would reach out their hands to touch and stroke him, not caring about burning their arms. I remember the night it all went wrong, though. The night when an enemy stole into our gathering. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody sniffed it out. The fiend had just appeared in the flames, and all of our eyes were on him, not on what was dashing out of the darkness straight toward the fire. It was a wild woman, her hair flying behind her as she ran. She carried 3 blades, one in each hand, the third gripped between her teeth. She burst right through the edge of the flames before anyone could stop her, and threw a blade straight at the fiend. I heard him scream, a shriek that split the sky above with forked lightning and made the stones groan beneath our feet. But she wasn't satisfied with that. Twice more she threw her blades. I wasn't close enough to see, but they told me later that all 3 reached their target. The first one stuck in his chest, the second one in his throat, and the third one went up to the hilt in the left cheek of his hairy arse. The last would have been the worst one for sure, but he turned away at the last moment. Why he didn't kill her on the spot, nobody knows. Certainly not we Deans. The fiend simply vanished, and the fire died down and went out in an instant, plunging us all into darkness. That was how the Mad Knife Woman made her escape. We raked 3 blades out of the embers of the fire. Each one was tipped with silver. We used our best scryers, but we couldn't find out who the mad woman was or where she'd gone. She'd cloaked herself in powerful magic. Later we sent assassins after her, 3 in all, over the space of a few days. Not one of them came back, and then the trail went cold, and even the best trackers couldn't find her. The fiend didn't appear to us for 5 years after that. It was a bad time. Really bad. Our magic was weak or didn't work at all, and some of our coven died of wasting diseases. They say it was the fiend taking his revenge on us because we hadn't taken enough precautions against an intruder. We hadn't kept him safe. Why she did it, nobody knows. At least perhaps some do, but if so, they ain't saying. Got a glimpse of her face as she passed me sprinting toward the fire. She was young, hardly more than a girl. Somehow I felt I knew her, seen her somewhere before. Almost had her name, almost. It was on the tip of my tongue. They were good times until then. I miss being a part of that big happy group. Most of all, I miss the cursing and seeing the fiend. Who knows? If I'd lived long enough, I might have become one of the coven and got to stroke the fiend myself. But it wasn't to be. The mad girl spoiled all that, and there was something else. Didn't see it coming, but my life was almost over. So, I like how we are learning more about her life with her, because she doesn't remember anything. And I also like how each chapter is a memory. But, so yeah, that was my Sabbaths, and the next one is my Doom. Chapter 2, My Doom. We are all fated, all doomed. What is written will be. We witches can sniff out the future, see dangers approaching, but few of us see our own doom coming. I certainly didn't. Over 70 years ago, even before my mother was born, a Inquisitor called Wilkinson arrived in Pendle, wanted to deal with the clans once and for all. So he brought priests, wardens, and 30 special constables, and they were all armed to the teeth and keen to kill witches. Made his base in Downham, he did, and started to arrest suspected witches from all 3 clan villages: Goldshaw, Booth, Roughly, and Barley. Not all clan members are witches, though, and he tried to sort them out using different tests. He swam a dozen of them. 3 drowned and another died of fever afterward. Another 3 sank but were dragged out barely alive. The 5 who floated were tried, found guilty, and hanged at Castor Castle. But swimming never works. And only one of them was really a witch. Not that it bothered Wilkinson much anyway. He was a nasty, greedy man. He seized their houses and possessions, sold them, and kept the money. After he arrested lots more, mainly Malkins, tested them with a bodkin this time, jabbed its sharp blade into their flesh until he found what he called the Devil's Mark, a place where he said they couldn't feel any pain. All nonsense, of course, but they say that he enjoyed his work. That's sick. Oh yeah, let me just stab you until you don't feel pain anymore. That's how I know you're a witch. Like, what? Oh yeah, let me just throw you into a lake, and if you don't freaking die of drowning, you're a witch. Like, these witch hunters really did not make any sense. Also, I like the inclusion of Castor Castle because I like how all of his stories are the same universe. It's like an interconnected universe. But anyway, however, the clans weren't going to stand for that. Not them. So they banded together in a temporary truce and collected their dead. Buried them under the loam in Witch Dell with the others. Somehow Wilkinson and his men were tricked into passing through the dell. Don't know how the clans did it. Nobody seems to remember that. It happened after dark, as they were traveling back to Downham. The dead witches were lying in wait, desperate for blood. Wilkinson survived, but over half his party were slaughtered. Their bodies were recovered later, but in broad daylight, of course, with the bright sun overhead. All the dead had been drained of blood, and their thumb bones were missing. The Inquisitor was in fear for his own life, so he made a hasty retreat from the district. But they weren't finished with him yet, were they? The Malkin clan used a powerful curse, and within 3 months every last one of Wilkinson's men was dead, including him. Some died in accidents, others just vanished from the face of the earth, probably victims of witch assassinations. Wilkinson's own death was particularly horrible. His nose and fingers fell off, and his ears turned black and withered away. Scared of dying, but scared of living he was. So he tried to hang himself, but failed when the rope gave way. Driven mad with pain, he drowned himself in the local pond. So the clan's revenge was complete. Didn't think anyone would ever try it again. Became too sure of ourselves, we did. All of us, me included. Well, I paid the price for that, and no mistake. Didn't see my own doom coming, did I? I like the character he makes with nothing but how she talks. like, became too sure of ourselves, we did. Like, talking like Yoda. Like, he gives her... he gives her character just with that. Like, obviously, he gives her character in other ways. But that is, like, a very simple thing that you wouldn't normally think about, but that does give her character, the way she speaks. So I find that interesting. One morning I was begging at a farm gate on the outskirts of Downham. This was the third time I'd been back in less than a week, and I'd scared that old farmer good and proper. Threatened to make his crops fail and his livestock be struck down with foot and mouth. The first time I'd just asked for eggs, the second a leg of lamb, but this time I'd come for his hoard of coins. Farmers were always moaning and crying poverty, but most of them have got something squirreled away. I want money this time, I told him. Nothing less will do. I have no money, he protested. I can scarcely make ends meet. You've already taken the food out of my children's mouths. Ah, you have children, I said, giving him a wicked grin. I do hope they thrive. How many have you? At this, his hands began to shake, and his bottom lip trembled, and his... Hold up. At that, his hands began to shake, and his bottom lip to tremble. Like a withered leaf in an autumn gale, I could tell that he really loved those children of his. 2 girls, he said, and another child on the way. You're a bit old to be a father. Got a young wife, have you? There was a movement in the doorway, and a woman came out into the late evening light and started to peg out her washing. She was less than half his age, but a bit of a dumpling, and not all pretty. Give me your money, or it'll be the worse for you, I threatened. The farmer shook his head, his expression a mixture of despair and defiance. He was on the fence now, and didn't know which way to jump. So I made up his mind for him. Wouldn't want anything to happen to that little defenseless unborn your wife's carrying around in her belly, would you? And what about her? Is she strong? What if she were to die in childbirth? How would you manage this farm alone, as well as raise young children? Be off with you, he cried, raising his stick. Give you a chance, I will. Be back tomorrow at the same time. Don't want all of your money. I'm not greedy. Half will do. Have it ready or suffer the consequences. Should have sniffed out what was coming. A stinky wind blows from the future, but I didn't even get a whiff. Next evening, the old farmer was waiting for me at the gate, but his hands were empty. Where was my bag of coins, I wondered angrily. Made a big mistake you have, I warned him, curling my lip. Got a nasty curse ready for you, old man. I'll make the flesh drop off your young wife's bones. He didn't reply. Not only that, he didn't even look scared. Well, maybe just a bit nervous, but not what I'd expected. I'd opened my mouth to begin the curse, but suddenly heard footsteps behind running toward me. I turned and saw 6 big men with clubs approaching me, spread out in a big arc and cutting off any hope of escape. Right I'd show him. I leaped the gate and ran past the farmer toward the house. His wife was inside, and even better, his children. I'd take them hostage, use them to make my escape. I slipped my sharp knife, the blade I used to take thumb bones, down my sleeve into my left hand. Be ready. Let 'em know I meant business. I'd almost reached the back door when I was brought to a sudden halt. A man standing just inside. Behind him lured another one holding a large stick, swaggering confidently. They both came out into the yard in front of me. By then, other men were climbing over the gate behind me, and within moments they'd surrounded me. I tried to fight, I really did. I spun and slashed at them with my knife. but there were too many of them, and the blows dealt were savage. One of the first knocked the knife from my hand, then they rained down on my back and shoulders. I crouched low, trying to cover my head, but they found it eventually. There was a flash of light, and then darkness. I was the first they captured that day. In the end, 5 of us were tested down at the pond. By chance, I'd chosen to beg from the farm on the very day that witch finder had called at Downham. The first such visit to Pendle by a quisitor since the days of Wilkinson. The farmer had gone to warn him, and then they'd set their trap and awaited my return. How come I chose that day and that place? It was my doom. It had been fated to happen. Swimming is terrifying. We witches can't cross running water, but lakes and ponds are usually no problem. I'd even been knowing to kneel at the water's edge and wash myself once in a while. Not in winter, though. Far too cold then. Dirt keeps out the winter chills. But it's very different when your hands are tied to your feet. I was the third they swam that old January afternoon. The first woman floated. She was just a clan member and lacked the craft. But that didn't bother them. Dragged her out of the pond, they did, and threw her up into the back of the wagon. Back of a wagon. The second one sank like a stone, and she was a real witch, one of the Malkins. The fiend didn't bother to save her, did he? Told you swimming don't work. They took their time getting her out of the water. By the time they did, she'd stopped breathing, so they chucked her body back into the pond where it sank for a second time. Then it was my turn. 2 of them swung me back and forth before letting go. I hit the water hard, was going to try and hold my breath, but that cold water was too much of a shock. I gasped and opened my mouth. The dirty water rushed in. I seemed to sink, but must have been floating face down. I could see the dead witch below me through the murk, hair drifting over her open mouth like a bony nose. Dead eyes staring up at me. I choked for a while, but then it didn't hurt anymore. Gave up I did. I was going into the dark. Well, why not? I'm a witch. That's where I belong. Next thing I knew, I was lying face down in the pond water gushing out of my mouth. Then I was sick as a dog over one of the men's boots. Gave me a good kicking for that, he did, before bundling me into the back of the wagon. They called 3 of us witches and rushed off to Wardcaster. Weren't going to risk the wrath of the clans this time, were they? Wanted to get us away from Pendle and into the safety of Castor Castle. Thrown into a dark dungeon I was, and all alone. Not that I wanted the company of the other two. One was Mound Heel, the other a Malkin, clan enemies. Dark and damp it was down there, with water dripping from the ceiling and just a bed of filthy straw to lie on. They couldn't even leave me in one piece to enjoy my misery, though. Came for me at midnight. Dragged me along a corridor into a room with a big wooden table, clamped my wrists and chained my arms. Weren't satisfied with testing me once. Before we kill a witch, we have to be doubly sure she is one, said the Quisitor. We've used swimming, now it's time for pricking. Really loved his work, that one. Matthew Carter was his name. And he smiled and stuck that long pin into me. The more I groaned and flinched and shrieked, the more he loved it. I fainted more than once. Soon my body was hurting all over, and I couldn't tell when he was jabbing me, and when he'd stopped, said he'd found the devil's mark. Then, true enough, it a birthmark just below my knee, about the same size as a copper coin it was, and this was where he said the devil had touched me, a place where the fiend protected me and I couldn't feel pain. It was enough for him. I was proved a witch twice over. They were going to execute us just after dawn, that's what he told me. And I spent the long night in that dungeon shivering with cold and fear. Couldn't face being burned. Not that. Please, not that. The pain was supposed to be terrible, and a witch can't come back after burning. She has to stay in the dark forever. They took us out at first light into the yard. It was a miserable morning with heavy drizzle falling out of a gray sky. I remember there was 3 seagulls on a nearby roof, one for each witch about to die. But then my spirits lifted because I saw what awaited us in the far corner of the castle yard. It wasn't fire, it was a gallows. They were going to hang us. That meant I'd be able to come back. Can't say it was pleasant, though. Not nice to be swinging on a rope, panting for breath, while with your face going purple and eyes bulging. That's the last thing I saw. The mold heel witch hanging next to me, gasping out her last breaths. Then my sight dimmed and everything went dark. All I could hear was my own heart thudding. At first it was going so fast that the thumps all merged into one. Then it grew tired. It was faltering, slowing, missing beats. Funny thing, dying. Strange the last memories you have. I saw the mad woman run past me on her way to throw her knives at the fiend. Suddenly I recognized her. Knew her name. It was. But then I died. Whoa. So, we're still wanting to know what that woman was that threw the knives at the fiend. I have a feeling there's a twist ending where it's actually her or her sister, whatever friend she went to visit. Like some twist that it's obviously a twist. But yeah, that was chapter 2. Yeah. I like it. I like the this portrayal of witches shows how corrupt the church was back then when they did all the witch hunting, because they were just killing women. That's all they were doing. They were just killing random women that, it's a rumor she's a witch, and then, okay, burn her. It was literally, it was literally like, it was worse than what they were claiming the witches of. Well, they were claiming the witches of working with Satan, and, obviously they weren't. Because they weren't witches. Before the spread of Christianity, there was good wizards and there was bad wizards. And that was after the spread of Christianity, too. I don't know what the frick, how magic and witches got turned into, specifically women working with Satan himself. Like, how did that get turned into? Like, when I think of a witch or a wizard, I think of, like, Lord of the Rings, Gandalf. Like, he can cast spells and stuff. Like, I hate how in, like, anime and Power Rangers, and I know that's weird to compare the two, but they say the attacks before doing it, And it makes sense in JoJo when they tell the stand what to do, but it doesn't make sense in other things, like it does in Pokemon, because you tell the Pokemon what to do, but it doesn't make sense in other things because it's literally useless, because you know what you're doing and then you're telling the enemy what you're doing. So it's literally like, I don't understand it. I guess it gives a name for the attack like very easily, but you can give it with some exposition. I mean, I think anime is famous for exposition, and the 2 animes I've ever seen in my life. 3 actually. I watched the first season of My Hero Academia. And the first anime I watched was Sword Art Online. I watched the first part, and then I was going to start the second part with the guns, and then I watched like 3 episodes, and it was boring, I thought. Apparently a lot of people do not like that one. And I thought the first part was okay, but I thought the second part was kind of getting boring. But yeah, so we were going from witches to anime. That's weird. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, I'm taking a little break here now, but I was just thinking, like, I kind of find it fun to read a book, like have a book sitting in front of me with a little bookmark made out of a piece of toilet paper, but it's just sitting there in front of me, a book I'm reading, and I think it's kind of fun. And then I was like, wait a minute, did I just say reading a book is fun? Because normally, I don't think a 17-year-old boy would find a book, like reading a book, fun. But I feel like if people who, I understand not wanting to read like 600 pages of a big old novel of something, but honestly, if you know how to read, it's not that hard. And if you have an imagination, you can play it out as a movie in your head while you're reading it, if you have an imagination. And I don't know, I just find, like, some people that find reading books hard, I feel like if you know how to read, reading a book wouldn't be hard if you know how to read. I feel like, but I don't think I would feel the same way when I was younger. So I guess by the fact that I feel different now than I did when I was younger, because I've read 5 or 6 novels so far for school, I think now that I've grown up and learned more, grown up mentally rather than physically, well, that too, obviously, but I think now that I've grown up mentally, and that giving me a new take on reading a book, I feel like that could allow me to say that if you aren't reading a book because you don't feel like it, that's childish. I feel like reading, if you know how to read, you can read a book. It's not that freaking hard. It might take you a while if you're a slow reader. Obviously, it'll take you, if you're a slow reader, I can guarantee you I'm a medium reader now. I used to be a really slow reader until I started reading a lot of books, and now I'm good at it. It's not that hard. If you know how to read, you can read a book. You will get faster at reading the more you read. It's really not that hard. But anyway, the tangent's over, and I'll be back to read chapter 3 in a little bit. But that's my opinion about reading a book, because I was like, wait, did I just say that I found it fun to read a book, to have a book sitting in front of me that I'm reading? Alright, I'm back. I just took a break and played some Minecraft. It's now almost 11 o'clock. I'm going to finish the story up. So, here we go. Chapter 3, My Revenge. The Dean clan collected my body from the castle yard and took it back to Pendle. They buried me in a shallow grave in Witch Dell and covered the bare earth with rotting leaves. Then they left me to enjoy my new existence. I remember sensing something above, so I stretched up my arms into the chill night air. I sat up and my head burst through the covering of earth. The dell was lit with a silver light. I was looking up through the branches of a tree toward a yellow orb. It was the full moon. That was what first summoned me back to this world. My next need was blood. Never had I felt so hungry. I began to crawl through the dell, sniffing for prey. There were no humans within range, but soon caught a few juicy rats and a field mouse. The rats took the edge off my appetite. Very small the mouse was, hardly a mouthful, but I couldn't remember anything tasting so delicious. I was a bone witch, but had drunk blood before. Though none tasting like that. It's so much better when you're dead. You don't need the ordinary food anymore. What good are potatoes and cooked meat to a dead stomach? That food, little though it was, gave me strength. Now I could stand, walk, maybe even run. So how would I feel if I managed to catch a man, woman, or child and drink human blood? Some dead witches ain't that strong, and the most they can ever do is crawl. I felt sure I'd be the one of the stronger ones. So I slid under my covering of leaves again and lay on my back for a while. Just my nose and eyes peeping up through them. Lying there, I suddenly noticed just how much my head itched. I kept having to scratch it. That's the problem with spending so much time close to the ground and hiding under dead leaves. Things get into your hair and make their homes there. You get lots of time to think when you're a dead witch, and my first thoughts were of revenge. At first I decided just to kill that farmer and his dumpling wife. The children would be really juicy, but that would be too easy. There was someone else I really owed for what had happened. Matthew Carter had tortured and murdered me, brought my happy life to an end. I wouldn't enjoy Sabbaths no more, would never get to stroke the fiend. Deserved the same back he did, and more, but how could I get to him? I know he was based in Castor. It was a long way there, could be done, but surely there had to be a better way. Didn't take me long to work it out, so I set out for Downham right away. I was going to have a serious talk with that old farmer. I still wasn't as strong as I'd have liked, but I made my way slowly north, keeping Pendle Hill to my left. Just before dawn, I managed to catch a couple of rats and settled myself down under a hedge to while away the daylight hours. It was long after midnight the following night before I arrived at the boundary of his farm. The first thing I did was kill one of his pigs. It was a small, plump, pink thing, and it squealed almost until the moment it died. That started the farm dogs barking. Must have been chained up, or they'd have caught my scent. Pity that. I could have managed to drain a dog or two, but I have to tell you that a pig blood is quite tasty. Next best thing to draining a human. That little squealer made me feel a lot stronger. I walked up to the front of the farmhouse and pulled the door right off its hinges. Somewhere above, a child started to cry. It was soon joined by another, and it wasn't long before the old farmer came to the top of the stairs in his nightshirt, the stub of a candle in his trembling hand. He saw me standing in the open doorway, gave a cry of terror, and ran back into the bedroom. I heard him slide a bolt into place. Not that it would do him much good. I followed him upstairs and leaned hard against the door until, with a creak and a crunch, it flew open. But then his wife was making more noise than her children, who were still screaming from the next bedroom. I went in, sat down on the edge of the bed, and stared hard at the pair of them. They were sat straight up, blankets pulled up to their chins, arms around each other. Couldn't tell which one was shaking the most. I grinned at them and scratched at my itchy head. A worm dropped out of my hair and began to wriggle around on the coverlet. Might let you both live, I told them. Might let your children live too, but they've got to do exactly what I say. Don't hurt us, please, begged the farmer. We'll do anything at all. I smiled. All you have to do is get Matthew Carter to come here again. Make sure he arrives after dark, mind. Must be after dark, that's important. Round about midnight would be best. Just tell him another witch has been bothering you, and you need him to come to sort her. What if you won't come? Asked the trembling farmer, his eyes wide with fear. Well, in that case, don't bother coming back, because if you do, you'll find your family dead. He left before dawn, but I stayed close to the house and buried myself under a pile of straw in the barn until it was dark again. Just the tip of my bony nose was sticking out. At dusk, that's where the child found me. The eldest daughter, no more than 5 years old she was. Plump little thing, too. I could smell blood pumping through her warm body, and it took all my willpower to let her live. I didn't want to have the mother in hysterics again. She had to be calm and peaceful when Matthew Carter arrived. When it goes dark, said the child, my mother turns all the mirrors in the house to the wall. Then she's a wise mother. That'll stop witches spying on you and your family. But you're a witch, and my mother says I should keep away from you, said the child. Mothers know best, I told her, so perhaps you should. So she's having a conversation with one of the kids. What's it like being a dead witch? Itchy, child, I told her, scratching at my head. Very itchy. I could comb your hair if you like, the child offered. She ran off. 5 minutes later, came back with a comb. I had planned to kill her and the rest of her family eventually, but as she was combing the worms and insects out of my hair, I relented. I just killed the old farmer. Go back to your mother and tell her to take you and your sister as far away as possible from here, I told her. And don't come back until well after dawn. Tell her to go right away. It's the only way to save your lives. I watched from the doorway of the barn as the mother took her children to safety, waddling like a duck as she set off on her little legs. Now I had to get myself ready. This time I would be the one waiting in ambush. Firstly, I lit the entrance and the stairs well, using 6 candles. A dead witch slowly loses her control of dark magic, but I hadn't been dead long, and I had enough left for what was needed. I heard the men approaching the front door. The old farmer had done well. I guessed that too would be planning to wait inside the house like the last time. I wasn't disappointed. Luckily, Matthew Carter was one of them. He came through the doorway first. I smiled at him from the top of the stairs. "Why don't we two have a little chat, handsome Matthew?" I suggested pleasantly, giving him my sweetest smile. "Just you and me alone together in the bedroom." As he started to climb the stairs toward me, his tongue was hanging further out than a hungry dog at the sight of fresh meat. Below, his companion looked very disappointed at not being invited into my company. I was using the dark magic spells, glamour and fashion, of course. The first could make even a dead witch appear extremely attractive. The second would have made him climb those stairs anyway. "Come and sit next to me on the bed," I bade the Quisitor, closing the door behind us. "Why don't we start with a little kiss?" He did as I suggested, but just before his lips fastened on mine, the eager expression on his face turned to one of dismay. He smelled the real me, the stench of rot and decay, of dark, damp loam and moldy leaves. Then I uncloaked myself from the spell, and his dismay turned to terror. As I started to feed, Matthew Carter screamed louder than his little pink pig. Than the little pink pig I'd killed the previous night. I plunged my teeth deep into his neck and drained him with great hungry gulps. I felt the throb of his blood start to become erratic. Soon his heart stopped beating. Now he was dead, Matthew, and no longer of any interest to me. I killed the second man in the doorway. The third and fourth were hiding in the barn, but I soon sniffed them out. There were others, but they ran off in panic. Only the farmer stayed. He thought his wife and children were still inside the house. I'd had more blood than I needed and was full to bursting. Even so, I passed clothes to the old farmer as I walked across the yard. I passed close to the farmer as I walked across the yard, close enough to start his knees knocking. "I've decided to let you live, but next time a witch begs at your gate, I warned him, give her what she asks for." Then I was gone, heading back south toward Witchdale. There's something else I forgot to tell you. After I died, I couldn't remember the name of the mad woman, strained my dead brain. I can remember the name of the mad woman again. Strained my dead brain, but it just wouldn't come. Now I'm a lot weaker and can't walk anymore. Even a dead witch doesn't last forever. And though my memories are slipping away fast, odd fragments keep coming back. I can see that daft girl now as she's running past me on her way to knife the fiend. And now I remembered she was a Malkin, and her name was on the tip of my tongue. The very tip. If only I could remember, I'd write it down. Then and our clan would speak of her out for sure. She'd hide forever. There are too many of us, and she can't defeat us all. It'll be light soon, so I got to crawl back to the dell. Maybe I'll remember and write it down tomorrow night. That's if my fingers haven't dropped off, and if I can still remember the way here. Alright. That was an interesting story. I liked, the idea of when a witch dies, and if she comes back to life, she turns into a vampire, basically. I like that, because she can't stay in the daytime, and blood gives her strength. So, I like that idea. Yeah, these stories are pretty cool. Definitely glad I started reading it. So, if it has hinted to who the other witch was, and I missed it, tell me in the comments. But the next story is Alice and the Brain Guzzler, and it says chapter 1, my name is Alice Dean. So she's also a dean. So I don't know if this next story reveals who knifed the fiend, but I will definitely continue this book and continue these readings. But the next 2 stories are 5 chapters each, so these videos will become longer. Probably an hour and a half. Probably it's like 20 minutes per chapter. So 3 chapters, that's an hour, and then my comments to an intro and the outro. But probably so if chapter 1, 2, and 3 are half an hour, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 4 and 5 might make it 2 hours and 20 minutes, maybe, I don't know, 2.5 hours. Wow, that'd be long. Yeah, it'd probably just be around 2 hours, but they would be longer videos for sure. But I'll definitely read them. And yeah, I like these stories. I'm glad that I picked this off my shelf and randomly started reading it. But I will continue this tomorrow. It's the next video now, and I just have one thing to say before the video is over. I liked how it was from the point of view of the villain. I like when stories do that. It gives you it makes you sympathize with the villain, even though you know it's wrong to sympathize with the villain. Seeing its point of view gives you, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. I like that part.